All right, good afternoon, committee. Welcome to K-12 Education Budget. We're going to go ahead and move forward. We have a hearing to start us off on House Bill 2444, establishing the school district mental health intervention team program. And so we'll begin with an overview. Nick?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So committee, House Bill 2444 would establish the mental health intervention team program in state law. So this would codify the program that's been going on for 4 years now. This was first established in 2018 pursuant to an appropriation act that you passed and an accompanying proviso with that appropriation act. Then the legislature, have continued this program since then through 1-year appropriation acts. And again, this would put this program into state statute. So the purpose is defined in the bill. So the purpose of this program is to provide greater access to behavioral and mental health services to K-12 students. It's intended to establish a cohesive structure for the provision of those services. It's intended to reduce the barriers that exist for families to access those services and to optimize the workforce resources in Kansas with those services between community mental health centers, other mental health providers, and school districts. This program primarily focuses on students who are in the custody of the Department of Children and Families, or students who are referred for Families First services or Family Preservation Program services. And also, just generally, this program focuses also on students who are in need of mental health services in school districts. So the way this program operates, and again, you all probably know a lot about this program already, but the program pairs school districts with community mental health centers to provide those behavioral and mental health services to students in the school districts. These school-based programs are intended to be tailored to the needs of the students in the school districts, and KSDE oversees the program. Under the bill, the KSDE would continue to oversee the program and put forth any policies and procedures related to that oversight role. So in each school year, a school district, in order to participate in the program, must apply to the Department of Education to establish or maintain its mental health intervention team program. If they are approved, if that school district is approved to maintain or establish a program, a memorandum of understanding must be entered into between the school district and the community mental health center for the coordination of of the mental health and behavioral health services. So this program would be subject to appropriations, so just like it is currently, and within those appropriations that the legislature, provide, the KSDE, the department, would disperse grants to participating school districts. And there would be 2 grants that would be dispersed to school districts. First would be a mental health intervention team program grant, which the bill is calling this type of grant. And this would be the grant for the school liaisons that are hired by a school district. Under the bill, a school liaison position would be capped, or the salary and fringe benefits that the grant would look at would be capped at $50,000 for that salary and fringe benefits amount. So if a school liaison was hired for more money than that, the grant would only capture $50,000 of that salary amount. The second grant amount would be a community mental health center pass-through grant. It's called a pass-through grant because this would go from the school district and be paid to the community mental health center that they are partnering with. And this would be an amount that's 33% of the school liaison grant. So that amount is set there. And again, that's a pass-through amount. The staff that would be required under this program are set forth in the bill as well. So it has to include a combination of 1 or more school liaisons employed by the school district, and then 1 or more case managers and clinical therapists that are employed by the partnering community mental health center. The bill in Section 4C lists the liaison requirements and the duties and obligations of school liaisons. First, generally, they must be hired by the school district, must be employed by the school district. Now, the bill does have an exception to this, where the Department of Education can grant a waiver to this requirement that a school district employs the school liaison itself, and instead, the liaison could be employed by the community mental health center. And in that case, the school district would pass through its grant amount for the liaison position directly to the community mental health center for that employment. Again, this under the bill, a liaison must at least have a bachelor's degree in any subject area, and then the bill lists the roles and responsibilities of the liaison. And generally, this includes identification of students who need services, helping to coordinate services between the school district and the community mental health center, working with the student's family for the provision of those services, planning the services during the school year and during summer months for students, and then facilitating communications between the school district, the community mental health center, the student, and the student's family as it relates to services. There's requirements for the clinical therapists who would be required to be employed by the community mental health centers. Master's level clinical therapists, they're assisting the liaison with the identification of students, triaging student services based on student needs, conducting clinical assessments, and then making treatment recommendations, providing individual student and family therapy services, and then making referrals for other appropriate treatment resources as appropriate. Finally, the bill lists what the requirements of the case managers are. They're employed by the CMHC. They're working with the school liaison and the clinical therapist to identify students, so everybody's identifying students, prioritizing treatment options, providing outreach to students and families, maintaining communication between all involved persons, making referrals to appropriate community resources, and helping to reconnect students and families if students stop receiving services, and helping to reconnect and restart those types of services, and then helping families or negotiate the barriers to access of these services. And this would be all of these entities working together would be the behavioral health intervention team at the school district. And that's generally how the program operates now, and this would codify that into law. The final thing with this bill is it establishes a mental health intervention team program fund within each school district. So what this would require is each school district would, any of those grant monies they're receiving for these purposes would have to go into this fund, and then any of the expenditures that the school district is making for liaisons, and then those pass-through grants would be expended from this fund, and the accounting would have to be done through this fund. And Madam Chair, I'd be happy to answer any questions. This would take effect on July 1 of this year.
All right, questions? Representative Boyd.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Nick. As it relates to the piece that you just talked about, if a school district was to go out and apply for grants, as it relates to this work, that money is required to go into this fund and can only be spent on services through to provide these types of mental health services.
So the grant amounts are all based on that. The school district is either employing a school liaison, so it's based on the salary amount of that school liaison. So the grants would be used to pay for those liaison salaries. And then the other option would be to that pass-through grant, 33% of the liaison amount that goes to the community mental health center for their services. Those would be the only authorized expenditures out of this fund that could be made by school districts.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Representative Wynn.
Well, I don't understand, maybe I didn't understand the question. Could a school district apply for other funds other than these two, and would they have to, the way I understood the question, would they have to go through this fund?
If this fund is only tailored to the appropriation that's made under the mental health intervention team. So any monies that you, the legislature, providing under the mental...
No. The school gets independently from XYZ.
I see.
foundation.
That would be separate. I mean, that there is no requirement that any separate funding that the school district receives must go into this fund.
That's how I understood the question.
I see. Thank you.
Any other questions? Representative Hill.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I haven't seen it. Is there a fiscal note on this thing anywhere? Or?
No, and Representative Landwehr, there's no appropriation that's being made here in this bill. But there is an appropriation that's currently, I believe, in the governor's recommended budget of 13.
And an additional $3 million is in the governor's budget. For this year. So this has been previously called a pilot program, and we provide the appropriations, and now this is codifying into law the program that we have funded through a pilot and making it more permanent, yes, for 5 years, as Nick said.
And so, Madam Chair, the legislature would have to continue to appropriate to this program, and the legislature would have the choice to continue to build and add money to this program as necessary. The program would be codified into law, but it would be restricted by the amount of monies that the legislature provides.
Okay.
And so for this bill, it's just establishing in law the program, but it would be something that we would look at in the budget. Any other questions? All right, thank you, Nick. All right, committee, we're going to officially open the hearing of House Bill 2444 with proponents first. We have quite a few proponents and neutral and a few opponents. So I'd like to ask that your remarks be kept to 4 minutes, and that way we can move through this. We'll begin with Kyle Kessler, Association of Community Mental Health Centers of Kansas. Welcome, Kyle.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Members of the committee, I am Kyle Kessler, Executive Director at the Association of Community Mental Health Centers. As a reminder, we represent all 26 licensed CMHCs across the state. And we appreciate the opportunity very much to be here in support of House Bill 2444, which would put the school mental health intervention team program into statute, and I think really provide a sustainable source of not just revenue, but just the policy piece of it to maintain a continuity for something which has been traditionally addressed on an annual basis in the budget process through proviso. So this committee has been very helpful in us forwarding that process, and I think that for us, and I will be brief with my comments because there are several experts speaking after me from our system in the school districts who have real life working almost evolution of how this program has worked. And for what started out, I think, 4 or 5 years ago with 4 or 5 people sitting in a room trying to figure out how to connect foster youth with timely services, and then realizing that, we were talking about an alpha group and a beta group, the alpha group being kids in foster care who were having trouble getting timely services to mental health treatment, and then the beta group being the kids who were at risk of going into foster care custody. And then all of a sudden you end up with them only getting about 10% or maybe 5% of the services in that first year. So that was one of the important linkages between the CMHC system and the school districts, was even working through just the original language and establishing a memorandum of understanding, because the privacy laws being so different between HIPAA and FERPA. So we in the healthcare world would say, yeah, FERPA is the HIPAA version for education, and then the education people would say it the other way. So understanding those languages, and that was an actual barrier to getting kids timely access to services was a significant factor for us. And so continuing the conversation, and then being able to see, and you have our written testimony as well, and on the back page it shows that gradual growth since the initial 2018-2019 school year, for how it's grown from 6 mental health centers to 14, then to 17, and now to 19, and about the same trajectory with school districts as well. So I think that, I would underscore the pieces relating to the fact that if there are school districts and mental health centers or other providers that have current working relationships, this does nothing to undermine those. That's not the intent. It was really to provide, the opportunity for new school districts to participate in that kind of a connection with their mental health center. So I mean, with that, I want to just say that this has probably been one of the 5 or 6 things that through my time working in public policy has been the most meaningful, just simply because when we look at the number of individual stories of behavioral health interventions that have taken place in many circumstances that saved a student's life, to then also looking at the outcomes and seeing the improvement in everything from student academic performance to behavioral to behaviors to attendance. I think that this is something pretty significant for the state of Kansas and our system, and for the students in the system as well. So with that, Madam Chair, I would conclude my comments and stand for questions at the appropriate time.
All right, thank you, Kyle. Next, we have Derek Knob from Central Kansas Mental Health Center.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good afternoon to everybody. My name is Derek Knopp. I am the School-Based Clinical Services Coordinator at Central Kansas Mental Health Center. Our Community Mental Health Center serves 5 counties in Central Kansas. You can find those in the written testimony. In 2018, 2019, the MHIT program started as a pilot. We were one of the first mental health centers to be able to partner with school districts. We partnered with 4 school districts in Dickinson County. Harrington, Chapman, Abilene, and Solomon districts were our original partners. When we first started partnering, we were able to serve 292 students in those 4 districts in our first year. The next year, 1920, we expanded into 4 additional school districts. That year, we saw significant growth in number of students who we could serve. Last year, at the conclusion of last year, we had served 1,065 students. Already this year, we've served 942, and I anticipate that that number will exceed 1,000 by the end of the school year. Some of the services that we're able to provide in the schools, we provide community-based services, so case management and social skills groups in the schools. And then we also provide an individual therapy, we have the ability to provide individual therapy and family therapy. In the report or in the testimony that are provided, you can see that the students who are referred to us for services related to internalized moods and emotions, externalized behaviors, school attendance, and academic performance, a majority of the students who were referred to our services for one of those reasons showed improvement after accessing services. I think that goes to show that being able to have services at the right time and the right place can improve student performance. Some of the barriers that this program has helped address over the last, now we're in our 5th year. One of the biggest things for us, we serve several rural communities and rural school districts. Before this program, if a student needed to access therapy services, they may have had to travel 45 minutes to an hour to come into our office, have an hour-long therapy appointment. Maybe while we're in a bigger town, parents are running errands, getting lunch, and then driving back to school. The student at that point may have missed 4 to 5 hours of academic time before being able to return. By being able to provide a therapist and case manager in the school, that student may come out for 45 minutes or 60 minutes, and then they're back in the classroom. That's one of the biggest benefits of being able to provide therapy case management in the school setting. Another barrier this has helped us kind of address is the stigma surrounding mental health. We've had several referrals over the past 5 years where we've got a student who is talking to a friend, maybe they're struggling with something, and the friend says, hey, I meet with a counselor, I meet with a case manager here at the school. Maybe that would be helpful for you. And then that's kind of the impetus for that student maybe talking to their parents about, hey, can I get a little bit of extra support there in the school? Those are a couple of the barriers that this program has helped address. Some success stories. We have many more, but not enough time to share all of them today. One of our local high schools, we partnered with the school there and our mental health team, and in 2 specialized classrooms meant for kids who have some pretty significant developmental disabilities or delays, we were able to establish a hygiene program there. One of the most significant stories, I was in supervision with one of my therapists, and she was telling me about a child who was referred for services for depression after experiencing a pretty significant trauma. After starting services, our therapist kind of learned that what the trauma was, what the nature of that trauma was, and also learned that that child was having near daily suicidal ideation and self-harm. After being able to engage in services for a while, the student stopped isolating as much at school, developed some replacement coping skills instead of self-harm, and reported reduced and then eliminated suicidal ideation. The quote that stood out to me was that child was in therapy, and she told the therapist, if I had not been in services while dealing with the trauma, I would have committed suicide. These are things that this program is able to address and that we can address at the right time, right place. I thank you for all of your support, and I appreciate your willingness to allow me to testify today.
Thank you, Derek. Next, we have Kathy Mosier, Family Service and Guidance Center. Welcome.
Thank you, Madam Chair, for letting me support House Bill 2444 today. My name is Kathy Mosier. I'm the CEO of Family Service and Guidance Center that serves Shawnee County and our Topeka area. The MHIT program has been one of the best and most cost-efficient ways to improve access to behavioral health services in Shawnee County. We partnered with our school districts to expand mental health services for youth who needed mental health services, but for whatever reason were not making it through our doors and were not in services. An example would be in 2022, our school partners did a great job of identifying 371 children who needed help falling through the cracks but were not receiving any services. They're all in our services today. House Bill 2444 could help us do more and be even more effective. An example would be that, there's a yearly application process in June. That's when the school makes the commitment, and then our schools, they decide at which level to participate, and then we know what we need to gear up and ramp up and hire the staff in the next 2 months to gear up for school. So having this put into statute would be a little more long-term. We'd be able to do some more long-term planning and not just grant-based, so it makes it a little bit more efficient and sustainable down the road. In 2022, we also doubled our program in Shawnee County through this program, and these partnerships just keep growing with the schools. We serve 52% more students than the previous year. And we have partnered in other ways. It's led to other side partnerships. Things like we created a suspension program so that kids who are suspended could come to Family Service and Guidance Center, to our classroom, where we work with them on the reasons they were suspended and help them have plans of how they're going to handle things next time to prevent that suspension. And then we help them stay caught up. They come for the same class hours as they would be in school if they weren't suspended. So if it's 8 to 3, that's when they come to our program, and we work with them to prevent further suspensions and then to keep them caught up on their classroom, their classwork. So another benefit of working with the Community Mental Health Center Network is that we offer the 24/7 crisis. We're open even when the schools aren't open. So during summer, during spring break, after hours, they can always call our center and reach us. The schools are the experts in education, and the community mental health centers across the state are the experts in mental health. And together, we both serve youth and families. So it makes for a natural partnership to pool our resources together in 2022. In 2022, we saved the state money by not duplicating staff, by not duplicating the services that we're each providing, and we saved taxpayer expense. And 99% of our clients and families said that they would recommend us to others. And I credit that to the partnership that we have with our schools as well, but they deserve a lot of that credit as well because we work so well together. So we support House Bill 2444 as the best value for each dollar invested, the best way to make mental health services more accessible to youth, and the best way to catch youth falling through the cracks, and finally, the best outcomes for the lowest cost. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Next, we have Dina Horst, representing the Kansas State Board of Education. And only one little request on testimony, Dina. If you guys could always put your email, Dina, yours, and Ann's on here, that would make it complete.
Okay.
All right, thank you.
We'll try to do that.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Chair Williams, Vice Chair Landwehr, Ranking Minority Member Nguyen, and committee members. The Kansas State Board of Education supports the legislation that transitions the mental health intervention team from pilot status to permanency within each qualifying school district. One of our bigger current concerns as a board is one regarding the need to provide this for student mental health. Maslow makes it clear that in order to be able to learn, a student's basic needs must first be addressed. Mental health is one of those needs. School mental health services have proven themselves to be successful in meeting the many mental and behavioral health needs that impede students' ability to learn. Providing such services in school removes many barriers to treatment, including transportation, parents missing work, missed instruction time, and available funding. Thank you for bringing what has become a vital program to our schools and providing us the ability to not only thank you, but to encourage you to pass favorably for passage by the entire House Committee of the Whole, House Bill 2444. Doing so will help this needed program extend to other districts across the state, as well as ensure its continued assistance for Kansas students who have already experienced its help. I will stand for questions at the appropriate time. Thank you.
Thank you, Dina. All right, next up we have Angie Salava from USD 233 Olathe.
Good afternoon. I'm Angie Salava. I'm the Director of Mental Health for the Olathe Public Schools. I've been with Olathe for 20 years, but this is my 33rd year as a Kansas educator. This program has been in the Olathe Public Schools for 3 years now, and I just want to provide a few examples of how it benefits our students. Last week, we had a student in one of our Title Elementary schools who got a pair of scissors and lunged at his teacher. When the teacher was able to get or dodge basically the scissors, the student turned the scissors on his classmates. When the student was subdued and when parents were called, we brought in a mental health liaison. That mental health liaison was immediately able to connect that family with Johnson County Mental Health. That student then was able to see a psychiatrist in a short period of time and get a referral to a neurologist. Without a program like this, that student would have gone on a very long waiting list through Johnson County Mental Health, and that student and their family would not have received those services in that timely manner. You know, when I began this business, student issues were probably the things that we all remember. Things like boyfriend and girlfriend problems, angry because of the way somebody looked at you or the things that people were gossiping about you. But issues have really changed. And issues were changing amongst our students prior to the pandemic, but they have accelerated since then. Just some things that our district has dealt with this year include a student who was raped by multiple people at a party. We have homicidal students who are threats to the school setting. We have many suicidal students. We do track the number of suicide assessments that we give, and as of February 28th, we had 271. We've had students who have had to be brought back to life with Narcan. We have 270 students who are receiving McKinney-Vento services, and just unprecedented levels of anxiety and school refusal. The nice thing about the MHIT program is it has allowed us to address these needs in a place where students feel the most comfortable, their school setting. Families tend to trust our schools, and they tend to know that it is a place where they can get needed services in the comfort of their neighborhood schools. This program is also very flexible. It's not a one-size-fits-all. What works for a 1A school district in Kansas doesn't work for our large 6A school. And we have been able to customize our mental health intervention team to meet our needs just as the same as some of the smaller schools. We currently have 5 mental health liaisons who are serving our 58 schools. Those schools, or those team members, besides referring to Johnson County Mental Health, also ensure that our students are receiving mental health services in their schools. So, when considering making this part of statute, just remember some of the students that this service serves and the success stories that you are going to hear from myself and colleagues. I will stand for questions at the appropriate time. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Angie. Next, we have Melissa Zimmerman. That's all I can do.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My name is Melissa Zimmerman, spelled really funny. I am the Director of Behavior for Wichita Public Schools. I've been in that position for 5 years now, and in education for 23 years. They have been the best years of my life, so I love education. I want to talk to you from the viewpoint of the largest school district in Kansas at this point. We serve approximately 10% of the public school students in this state. So we were one of the original sites for the mental health pilots, and in the original project, 21 behavioral health school liaisons were hired with the funds appropriated by the legislation in this team. We partner with ComCare. Of those 21 school buildings, they served with a therapist and a case manager that were available at our services for our kids that had high needs. Of course, we've worked through some processes. Now we are a fine-tuned machine. We currently have 30 BHSLs that serve 36 different schools. Now, when you think about that, remember our schools are a lot bigger than a lot of other schools. So we have as many as 500 to 600 elementary school kids in a building, sometimes more than that. So some of the successes I want to talk about is since the start of this grant, we have served 2,219 students and families in mental health services. That is unprecedented. As part of their school day. So we have managed to decrease absenteeism, increase mental health awareness, and increase med management within our schools. And I put some stats in the testimony, which I believe you guys get, that talks about the amazing data that we've managed to have with the outcomes from these students. So some program successes that we've had is, of course, that increased access to mental health. Students are really seeking out the services, and our teachers and our administrators are welcoming that mental health support. So it's becoming very less stigmatized than it has been in the past. Another thing that I want to talk about is our behavioral health school liaisons that are actually in our building. Their presence in the building allows them to assist students that are having those crisis moments. On top of that, our teachers are reaching out to our liaisons for their own mental health sometimes and for resources for their own families and support systems and stuff like that. There are many students for whom these behavioral health school liaisons are the only consistent part of their life, with the high number of absentees and with staff as well. So keep that in mind also. They're the only ones that sometimes can keep these kids regulated. And so I do want to tell you a specific story. We had a school in one of our neighborhoods that had three students in services prior to adding the MHIT program. And so those kids actually was almost like this grant where they received services as part of their school day, but we only had 3 kids in a building the size of 700 that were taking advantage of those services. We added a behavioral health school liaison after meeting with our vice mayor, and them identifying this particular area of our city as being a mental health poor area with not a lot of access to services and a lot of stigma around mental health. After we added this program to that building, we managed to get a total of 31 kids in services by the end of that year. And so that liaison was able to go out, meet with families, introduce the families to the school system. It was part of their neighborhood building, so they didn't have to go outside of the comfort of their neighborhood. Transportation barriers were eliminated as a result of this. And to date, we now have 45 kiddos in services at that school, and it's one of our highest need schools. So that is my success story I wanted to share with you. I will answer any questions you have later. I don't know what they said. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Zimmerman. Erica LaSalle is next from USD 305. And by the way, I'm probably messing up everyone's name, so.
You were very close on mine, Lysell.
Okay, thank you.
So Chair Williams and members of the committee, good afternoon. My name is Erica Lysell, and I'm a licensed master level social worker, and I'm one of the school behavioral health liaisons for the Salina Public Schools. We currently have 8 elementary schools, 2 middle schools, and 2 high schools. We became a part of the mental health intervention program back in the 2019-2020 school year. I was pleased with our numbers the first year and just kept my fingers crossed that we could maintain that. I had no idea that it would grow to where we are today. We are hoping by the end of the school year we will be at about 600 students served. Having services in the school has started to destigmatize mental health concerns. We get referrals from the school counselors, from teachers and administrators, but the most impactful ones occur when a student comes down on their own because a peer has mentioned that they are getting services and they want to know how they can get in on that. And that is just such an incredible feeling that students are talking about this with each other. When I call the parents and the guardians of kids that are going to potentially be referred, this also turns into letting the parents know about available services and what they can access for themselves for things they might be struggling with. I think we all can agree that if parents are getting help with their issues, it is going to help them be better parents and impact our students in a positive way. Having a mental health point person has also been a help to our staff members. I have assisted 2 people at the school that I am housed at in accessing their employee assistance program and getting therapy services started. I've been pleased with our outcomes as well during this time in the mental health intervention team program. We look at the measures of improved attendance and academics, as well as improvements in internalized and externalized behaviors. I do feel that if this program was to become a part of the regular school budget, we would feel more stability. We could look at expanding these measures as well. We could also look at investing in more service providers to meet the demand of the referrals that we are making. In my written testimony, I shared some of our successes, but just earlier this week, I was working with a student who was having thoughts of suicide. We had the ability to get them in with the therapist on site at the school within an hour, have the parent Zoom in to work through a crisis plan and talk about triggers for the student that day at school. And the parent never had to leave work. The student was terrified about me calling the parent because they had just started a new job after a bout of unemployment. And they said, you can't call. We can't bother her at work. And I said, well, we have to. So it was just amazing that we were able to get that parent away for a very short time versus having to drive in, sit through, potential waiting time, and then get back to work. And every person verbalized the thankfulness. The student was thankful knowing that there were people that cared about them. The parent was thankful that they could just take that step away from work for a while. And the school staff, they were just so thankful that the student could return to learning for the rest of the day while feeling safe and cared for, which made it easier for them to focus on their schoolwork. This story is a great example of why we should have the mental health intervention team program as a stable part of the school budget. Unfortunately, I don't see these needs going away in the near future. We want to continue to make things safe and secure for students in our care for years to come. Great things are happening in the Salina schools and the schools around our great state because of MHIT. It has caused the partnership between the schools and the community health centers to flourish. In Salina, we are teaching youth mental health first aid and applied suicide intervention skills and training to the school staff so that people are not only aware of symptoms, but know how to deal with things in the moment before they go on to get professional help involved. We are working with things such as how are we going to pay for services? How are we going to get transportation to school? How are we going to work on kids that have the long-term suspensions? All these things are coming together as a part of this mental health intervention team program. When we can take away some of the stress about a program, or even if it will exist in the following year, and make plans because we know it's secure, we will be able to continue with the great care we are providing. Thank you, and I'll stand for questions at the right moment. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Erica. Next, we have Chantel Westbrook from ComCare of Sedgwick County, and she's on WebEx.
Yes, hello, and thank you. My name is Chantel Westbrook, and I've worked with the MHIT program since the beginning in 2018. I'm Director for Clinical and Rehab Services for Adults and Children at ComCare of Sedgwick County, our largest community mental health center in Kansas. I'm very pleased to be able to talk about this today. Much of what I have written and what I was going to say has already been said. I think it's interesting because the impacts are so similar from different regions of the state in just the difference that this has made. But I will go ahead and share some of my points in a timely way. So we were one of the first, or we were in the first year pilot in 2018. Since that time, the programs have grown consistently every year. What's really noteworthy to me is the outcomes have been positive and really show impressive results. Part of what brings that success is this partnership that you've been hearing so much about. That partnership between the school system and the community mental health center is really unique in taking those two different missions and kind of blending them to really make a difference for these youth. So many of these youth were not able to obtain services. You've been hearing kind of about the barriers and the way to that this reduces the barriers on transportation, on the time to get into services, stigma also being greatly reduced. I appreciated that being part of one of the first testimonies is that stigma reduction being a significant part of what this does. The time savings of youth not having to leave school. Many times they would leave school and they didn't want to return for the last hour and a half. It was too far to go back, not that much time left in the school day. And I think this is the most efficient way of really serving these youth. So as time went, we added two more school districts were added in the Sedgwick County area. And each of these districts have expanded and been able to reach more and more youth at all three, really at the four levels: elementary, middle, high school, and the alternative schools. And I'll make note of just some of the outcomes that others have mentioned, but reducing negative behaviors, increasing school attendance, increasing academic performance, those are all things that have really been shown through this program. The other part that I think is very significant, and again, that's been mentioned, but I'll just quickly also say that we as a community mental health center, we are 12 months a year. We serve year round. We try really hard. The goal is to keep services moving in the summer on break so that there's not any gaps in services. And then our 24-hour crisis services 7 days a week is really valuable. We also have the ability to, our crisis program can see the progress notes and really make it a seamless system of care. And I was just going to very quickly indicate one success example, but for the sake of time, I'll shorten it. But really, that liaison, being able to do that early identification, being able to keep eyes on kids, being able to bring to the attention. I remember a youth last year that was really struggling, going to be moved to an alternative school. The liaison was able to really identify, wait, there's some underlying things going on that need to be discussed first. We were able to get the youth into the MHIT program and saved a placement from having to move to an alternative school, being able to stay at this youth-based school, which we considered an amazing success. So thank you very much for this opportunity to provide testimony today in support of the House bill. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Chantel. We have all of our proponents. Did I miss anyone that was prepared to give oral testimony for proponent? All right, at this time, committee, let's go ahead and open up for questions for any of our proponents. Just let me know which person you'd like to direct your questions. Representative Schmoy.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think any of the proponents could probably answer this for me. Just so that I'm clear, is this like a parent opt-in? Do they have to opt in? And if they refuse service, what does that look like for the kid?
Just, yeah, feel free to come on up, Ms. Zimmerman. Go ahead and hit the microphone, make sure it's on, and you're set. There we go. We can leave it on.
Sorry, teacher voice. We definitely allow parents to opt out. We have to have permission before we can serve kids, and that's all there is to it. However, if parents do opt out, one of the beauties of our system in Wichita Public Schools is that if a kid can't get into the program for whatever reason, whether it's an unresponsive parent, a parent doesn't agree to that, or it's just not part of that kid's destiny, right? Our behavioral health school liaisons are part of our school system, so then they can serve with an opt-in form. It doesn't have to be insurance exchanging or anything like that. We do that through groups. We do that through, just side-by-side play. A liaison may go into the classroom and do observations or help them complete whatever work it is to help build those relationships and support that kid regardless of whether they're able to be in this position or in this program or not.
Okay, but
answer that question?
All of that still requires the parent to say, yes, you can service my, okay. All right. I appreciate what you guys do. Thank you.
Other questions? All right, well, I do have a quick question for Kathy. Okay, well, I'll let Kathy come up since she's coming up, and then Representative Johnson, you go next. Kathy, you talked about suspensions, and are those kids required to come to your community mental health center for that suspension time, or is it an option? And is it only for those students that you're serving, or is it anyone?
It's an option. And and with our school partners, they can better make parents aware of that option when these things happen. And that we're here and that they don't have to miss work, they don't have to leave their kid home alone, they can bring them to us. To provide the service, we do have to go through the consensual paperwork that would be legal. And so once that paperwork is through, they're able to join. So there is the consensual piece to it.
Okay, sounds like a great alternative for kids that can't be in the school, and we don't want them just running around, so they can still do their work. Representative Johnson.
Well, thank you, Madam Chair. I'd like to ask Erica Lysell if she'd come up a moment here. Would you be the same youngster that used to run the streets of Lindsborg, Kansas?
That is me.
That would be. I am amazed.
There, and I kept thinking, I think that's Chief up there.
Yeah.
Yes.
You done good. You got yourself a degree and all that stuff.
I sure did.
Who'd have thought it when you was running with my kids back there?
Exactly, yes.
They all turned out good.
No, it's amazing.
This is a great thing. We're going to have to help you, okay?
That would be wonderful. I truly believe in this program. This is my 25th year in the mental health world, and this has been such a great experience.
Yeah, it's so good to see you, kid.
Good to see you, too.
I thank you, Madam Chair.
Representative Johnson, remind me, what did you teach?
Well, I was teaching social studies, but a long time ago, back in Lindsborg, I used to do children messages for kids at church. And so that's how I always done talked when I was doing that. And that's what
I was
she
just
would
wondering where
remember me by.
It's a little hokey there. I was just wondering. Okay, lots of fun. All right. Committee, we're going to go ahead and move on to neutral testimony. We do have two that are providing testimony. And first, it's Stuart Little, Behavioral Health Association of Kansas. Stuart, are you here? There he is in the back.
He's got to crawl through everybody back there.
I think just check and make sure your mic is on.
That's my way to get nobody to ask me any questions when I return to my seat. Good afternoon. I'm Stuart Little with the Behavioral Health Association of Kansas, Substance Use Disorder Treatment Provider Association around the state. Some of our members do work with some school districts, prevention programs, and those kind of things. We're neutral here on this bill because this is a wonderful investment of resources by the state. You've heard great stories about how this is working, the services that are provided, the work that is provided. I would note that currently and under the pilot program, the program has been available for other providers besides community mental health centers who've been able to participate in this. And so the folks that I represent, there's also some testimony, neutral testimony that's submitted from the Community Care Network, which is federally qualified health centers, and from Shawnee Mission School District who work with FQHCs, that a program that currently would allow other people to participate in that is part of what's making this work well. And that openness is something that we value, and some choice for schools to make decisions about who they may want to work with for different kinds of services. You have some flexibility to do that. If this is bound only to one provider system, we're going to lose that. And part of what will happen as well is that a school may be forced to be in a position where they may want to do some type of health work that would include behavioral health, and I'm thinking of, for example, an FQHC or something, where they would be able to provide, as they do, integrated care, including primary care, dental services, those kinds of things. And the school district's going to have to make the choice of, we're not going to do what we want to do because the funding stream that exists is through this one path. And what we would like to see is everything that's been described here, the wonderful outcomes that everybody talks about, but having this be a part of this is some opportunity for other providers to participate. And I think one of the things that I just have to note, and it's not to be picky, but I can be a picky person sometimes, there's some language in the bill that talks about one of the rationales for this, and I think about the workforce issues that we all face. There's language in the bill on page 1, line 34, that talks about that one of the purposes is to reduce the competition for such staff between school districts and other private and governmental service providers. I'm not sure that we put those kinds of things in statute. I mean, there's a market. If you're a hospital that's looking for some staff, I mean, there's any number of people that aren't in that system that would have, I mean, and if we're putting that in statute, I don't know what that means. That's just for someone who works in a field where there's lots of different people that do work like that. That I don't know if that should fit as an expressed purpose for the legislation. I'll be happy to stand for questions at the appropriate time.
All right. Stuart is on the record for school choice and more competition. So, next item, Leah Fleiter is up with KASB.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. I had I talked more closely with Stuart, I could have just said, yeah, we sign on to Stuart's testimony, but we appear as neutral because we value the MHIT program very much. We thank Representative Landwehr for her work, as well as the rest of the legislature and the governor for developing this program and supporting it and continuing to fund it on a proviso basis every year. And so we applaud the intent of the bill, which is to put it in statute and kind of permanentize the MHIT program. Our only concerns echo Mr. Little's in that the way the bill is written now, it seems to only allow CMHCs to be the designated provider, and I know many of our districts might use Children's Mercy, or they might use a local rural health center or other local providers, and so we just would respectfully request that the bill be amended to provide a little more additional flexibility as far as providers.
All right, so we have Leah and Stuart for any questions. Committee for neutral. All right, if there's no questions, then we'll move on. It looks like the other testimonies provided for neutral are written only from Andrew Brown and Michelle Hubbard. Next to opponent, we have Eric Thomason from Community Health Center of Southeast Kansas.
Madam Chair and Committee, my name is Eric Thomason. I serve as Vice President of Behavioral Health and Addiction Treatment Services for Community Health Center of Southeast Kansas. My most important job is to serve as a father for my 3 and soon-to-be 5-year-old daughters. I appreciate the opportunity to provide opposition testimony pending amended changes regarding House Bill 2444. Prior to starting, I first would like to thank and share my appreciation with the Kansas Association of Mental Health Centers, Kansas Legislature, and other collaborative partners for your work to highlight the significant behavioral health needs throughout Kansas. Community Health Center of Southeast Kansas is a federally qualified healthcare center. We are proud to serve 10 counties throughout Southeast Kansas. Our hours of operation are 7 to 7, Sunday through Saturday at most clinic locations. In total, our clinics are open 2,200 hours per week. We offer comprehensive and integrated medical, behavioral health, pharmacy, dentistry, and diagnostic services. Community Health Center serves 72,315 unique patients in 2022. Accounting for 273,156 visits. We provided 40,837 behavioral health visits, with 10,949 of those visits occurring within school-based behavioral health programs. I want to underscore that these school behavioral health visits reflect therapy appointments which are completed by a therapist holding a master's degree or higher. Not included in these numbers were the work of our community health workers who support social insecurity such as food, transportation, housing, and care coordination services. Our clinics serve as a training facility for over 200 multidisciplinary students per academic year. We continue to fight alongside our community partners to help train, retain, and share the best and brightest healthcare providers from local, regional, and national training programs. We absolutely support the development and implementation of multidisciplinary, collaborative behavioral health teams within school districts throughout Kansas. We identify concerns regarding restrictive language that identify community mental health centers as the only designated service provider. Community Health Center has demonstrated a willingness and competency and passion for the work that few have replicated. Please know that we fully understand no one organization can meet the behavioral health needs of our communities. This battle will require a collaborative, multifaceted effort from all willing organizations. The purpose of this testimony is to humbly request organizations that are willing, capable, and motivated still be permitted to do this work. We respectfully request the removal of restrictive language that identifies community mental health centers as the only available service provider in favor of the utilization of community-based providers, further defined as 501c3 nonprofit healthcare organizations. I recognize that this is a broad description of participating organizations. The intent was not to restrict a service provider that was capable and willing to do this delicate work. We are committed to working with Legislature and the Mental Health Association to develop inclusive language for qualifying service providers while ensuring the service provider is capable of providing support and multidisciplinary staff for children in Kansas. At this time, I would like to conclude my testimony and stand for questions at the appropriate time. Thank you.
All right, since you're the only one, this is the appropriate time.
Perfect.
Sonia is written testimony only. Do we have any questions, committee? Yes, Representative Garber.
Thank you.
Now I am, maybe. All right. Thank you. So what you're saying is, in 2018, when we started this program, this trial or whatever we want to call it, you were part of that.
No.
You were not part of that.
Correct. So the Community Health Center began offering school-based behavioral health services in 2015. This originally started at the request of the local school district, USD 250, due to some behavioral issues that were noticed within the clinic. So we sent one therapist to this school district, and very quickly we recognized we needed to send more. So we currently employ 19 therapists. We offer school-based behavioral therapy in 6 separate districts. We serve 39 academic institutions just as a part of our school-based health program, whether that be universities, daycares, and other school districts in Southeast Kansas.
So only community mental health centers were part of this program.
Correct, at that time, to the best of my knowledge, in our service area.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Other questions? Representative Owsley.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And thank you. I don't think I have so much a question, just commend you to being up here and being an opponent for something that you obviously appreciate the concept for, but just disagree with the language in the bill. And I know that's not an easy thing to do, so thank you for being here.
Thank you very much. It is not. We absolutely support our community members. There is no doubt that this service is needed and it's working. We just want to continue to help. And I'm afraid that with some of the language in this bill, it'll limit our impact to help the kids that really need it in rural Kansas.
Representative Poskin.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I wanted to thank everybody who came today, and a shout out to our Vice Chair for her work on this really important initiative. And I just want to make sure that I understand that everybody in the room would be proponents if the language in the codification of the pilot program was consistent with the budget provisos that have gone through since 2018. Is that correct?
I would absolutely change my opposition testimony.
Okay, thank you so much, and thank everybody for the work that you do. This is critically important to our families and children. Thank you.
Are there other questions from committee members? Representative Landwehr.
Thank you. Appreciate you being back up here again today. You do realize there's nothing that stops you from providing services in schools.
Absolutely. We are aware. I, however, would like to play a greater role in formulating this multidisciplinary treatment team.
Okay. Is it also true that as a FQHC, you have the ability to be a CCBHC?
Correct. And Vice Chair Landwehr, I'm glad you brought that up. So we did actually file a letter request to become a CCBHC. However, we were notified by the Kansas Department of Aging and Disability Services that our review would not be considered until July 2024 because KDADS is under the impression that they are legislatively obligated to transition all community mental health centers to CCBHCs before they will accept outside applications. In my written testimony, I included that we are the largest federally qualified healthcare center. We are also the largest behavioral health center in Southeast Kansas. I believe that we deserve an opportunity to prove ourselves as a CCBHC, and I do not want to be left out of, or we do not want to be left out of organizations or programs that have the ability to change the lives of children throughout Kansas.
Okay, well, we have a phase-in program for the CCBHCs, and the reason that that's phased in is because of the fiscal notes that's involved with that. In fact, we had discussion this morning in the Appropriations Committee about being able to accelerate, I think it was, four or five of our CMHCs to escalate them to get them to CCBHCs a year earlier. And right now, there's not the will to spend the money to do that. So that's why you would be sitting on the outside of that there. It's not because we don't welcome more CCBHCs, because we do. This program One of the reasons that we've not been able to pass legislation to actually put this into law is because of the opposition from folks like yourselves and others wanting to be engaged in it. And it's not because we want to eliminate that. We actually did that for 2 years with outside entities, and it created hiccups in the entire system. So it's been kind of nice having it out there as a pilot system because we've been able to fix things. Because the Department of Education actually had one individual, and she was previously the lobbyist for the 259 school district, that would travel the state and go into each one of the school districts and visit with them, make sure that the liaisons had all the tools that they needed, that the CMHCs had what they need, what worked for each school, because as you well know, rural is different.
Absolutely.
In the urban, we had one liaison that was split between 2 districts. We've got liaisons that split between 2 districts and a co-op. So it becomes unique. We've actually got one school district that is so small they didn't want to hire the liaison. They wanted the CMHC to do that. So that's what this bill would allow them to actually do that. So they still have the services. But it doesn't stop any of our FQHCs. And we actually visited with FQHCs when we first started this program, and we just couldn't see a path. And at that time, because not all FQHCs are operating 24/7 with crisis services. And what we found is some of the outside entities that we did allow in there for a couple years, they said, oh yes, we've got 24-hour services. Guess what? They would provide the CMHC crisis hotline. Yeah, that's not providing the services.
Sure.
Because continuity is a very big part of this program. The reason it started was when I visited a elementary in my legislative district, and as I sat with the social worker, I kept hearing one word, and it was called disconnect, disconnect, disconnect. That child has this social worker here today, but when they have the meltdown at 10 o'clock at night, there's nobody available for them. It happens on the weekend. The issues that we heard from some of our other folks that presented was the fact that parents would have to take off of work, take their kid to a counselor, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Kids were missing school. So I don't want folks to take it. It's not like we're wanting to stifle anyone, and there is nothing that stops an entity from subcontracting with a CMHC or a CCBHC. And I know out in Southeast, you've got Fort County out there, which is phenomenal.
Absolutely.
Our first
Great job.
CCBHC that's out there in the state. And I know a lot of good things about you, so it's your organization, so it's not a negative on that part there. And I think it's not, I think, I know I'm more talking, Madam Chair, than the questions, but I know we've got a lot of new people out here that don't necessarily understand how this all came about. And it took us, it's taken us a long time, because our first year that we funded it was actually in 2019, and we started with 9 school districts because we wanted to keep it small so we could control it. Our alpha kids are foster care kids, our beta kids are our high need kids, and then anyone else that wants to join. So we don't limit it on the kids. I believe it was Olathe, and correct me if I'm wrong, but Olathe was a school district that didn't start out with it because they had their own program, but now they use it on top of their existing program. So they didn't replace the program they had because of the relationships that they had with other people. So, and I know Stuart Little and I've had this discussion, over the years. It's not because I don't like our FQHCs, because there are safety nets. One of the other things that makes it so important for the CMHCs and the CCBHCs is by law, they are required to take any and everybody, irregardless of the ability to pay. They cannot turn anyone away at the doors, just like an ER. And that was also a big factor in this. So if we're able to move this legislation forward, don't take offense to that. We're always, willing to look at it, and I'm happy to help you become a CCBHC, another piece of legislation I've had the privilege to be engaged in. We're very excited because we were the first state in Kansas to license CCBHCs through legislation. So it's pretty exciting what we're doing here for mental health.
Absolutely. Vice Chair Landwehr, can I make one statement?
Yes.
Happy birthday.
Oh, thank you. It's, 68 looks pretty good versus the alternative, so I appreciate that.
And I was going to say that here we are doing House Bill 2444, and we've got the author or the original mastermind of this mental health pilot program.
We had a lot of good people.
Let's say she was one of a team that worked for this, and so it is a happy birthday for her, and she's so thrilled to be here today. I can tell. So, any other questions, committee, for our guests here today, conferees? All right, well, thank you for coming up to the Capitol. Committee, is there any other items related to House Bill 2444? And did I miss anyone that had planned on providing testimony? All right. With that, committee, I am going to close the hearing on House Bill 2444. There is one other procedural item that we need to do. Committee, as you know, we work the budget here in this committee, and we usually create a bill in which we use our recommendations and combine them with policy. Tomorrow in appropriations, we'll be back, and I'm scheduled to give a report out. So that report out will include the fact that the contents of the governor's budget that are in two House bills will be placed in Senate Bill 113. So today, Representative Landwehr is going to make a recommendation by motion. We will need a second to put that contents. The second will be by Representative Johnson, and then we'll take discussion. Representative Landwehr.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would move budget recommendations, K-12 education budget provisions from House Bill 2274 and House Bill 2273 be moved into Senate Bill 113, which includes the following. Do you want to go through those? The State Department of Education budget for FY23, FY24, and FY25 as provided in Section 24 of House Bill 2274 and Sections 57 and 58 of House Bill 2273, and Section 118 of House Bill 2273, amending KSA 725462 relating to school district capital improvement state aid revenue transfers from the State General Fund for FY23.
Representative Johnson?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would second this motion.
All right, we have a motion and second to make the recommendations to the Appropriation Committee. We're not actually working this bill today. We'll be working it Monday. So that means the Senate Bill 113. That'll give you the opportunity then at that time to bring your budget amendments, things that you like or don't like or want to add. That's that discussion time for our budget policy bill. So I'll open it up for any discussion on the budget recommendation motion. Yes, Representative Owsley.
Just for clarification, this is the part where you cut out the Department of Education's budget from the appropriations budget and the appropriation process. So we're taking now over half of the state budget and we're eliminating over half of the process that the rest of the budget goes through.
Well, eliminating would mean that we would be erasing $5 billion. We're not eliminating anything. We are bringing it to this committee so this committee can take more time on it in the bill that was recognized. If anybody's been in appropriations, you can speak in just a minute. Anybody that's been in appropriations, we ran into this today with KDAD's budget. You have billions of dollars in the KDAD's budget, and there is not the time to go over every single item. So we gutted it and set it off to omnibus. That happens over and over and over and over. The subcommittees are one of the best places to dig into the details. And so we will have a difference of opinion, but that is the process that we're selecting. Yes, Representative Owsley.
And Madam Chair, by eliminating half of it, I wasn't concerned in the dollar amount. I was concerning the process that every other subcommittee goes through as it goes through the subcommittee process and then to the larger process of the Appropriations Committee, which I believe is a 23-member committee as well, and not just the 13 of us in here. I just wanted to correct that.
Sure, and thank you, Representative Owsley. The great thing about it is we debate this on the floor, and there are 125 members. And so I think we're just going to have to disagree on the rationale of having a budget with some policy that goes with it, transparency, accountability, or anything that relates to K-12 education. I think we're just going to have to disagree on that. Representative Landwehr.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This process was started, I want to say 4, maybe 5 years ago, that we started when this committee was actually expanded and we were working on the formula. Because of the details, as you heard the Madam Chair talk about, it was decided that the formula or the budget part of it and the policy part would go hand in hand, because it was not something that we felt that the Appropriations Committee would be able to give as much due diligence to as a group of individuals focusing just on the K-12 budget. As she said today, and if you want to get an understanding of what we're talking about, is go and listen to the Appropriations Committee today. And I want to say that there was probably $150 million that was set aside because of the confusion, and that was just on one budget that was coming in. And now we've got to be able to go back and find the time to dissect that because of the time limits we're on. K-12 would not have that ability to do that. So that's why this process has been put in place for several years. It's not unusual, it's not abnormal, and it's actually happened on and off periodically over the many years that I've been around.
Representative Nguyen.
And thank you, Madam Chair. And I know we'll go more in depth on this Monday, but just remind me what sections 57, 58 is.
Of the motion?
Yes.
We could ask Nick to go over that, but these are basically all the funding provisions that were included in the governor's recommendation.
Okay.
So.
It was clear fiscal year.
Yeah. And then anything that we wanted to add or subtract, we would do that Monday. We don't have to, we're not going to go through that today, so nobody has to worry about being prepared. Any other questions? Representative Owsley.
Thank you for entertaining my questions. This is one way to do it. Obviously, it's been done for the 5 years now. As a budget as large as this, refresh my memory, how many days have we spent actually reviewing the documents? And I do appreciate them being sent back out via email today, but we've had this draft now, and I can recall one day for sure that we spent going over it along with the department's request or recommendations. Has it been more than 2? And then will we finish our work on Monday when we gut Senate Bill 113 and insert this along with whatever policy the committee chooses to insert?
So we've had one day at least, could be more, and JG and Nick could help me with that, on going over the budget. And then we've had a day with Kansas Department of Education. We've had testimony provided by anybody that wanted to provide testimony, and you all have that. It's also been in your possession for I'm not sure how many days, so that you can go meet with whoever it is that you would like to and ask questions. I know that I've met with JG, I've met with my vice chair, I've met with the Division of Budget. I have sent countless emails to Craig at KSDE, and he would probably not mind if he had somebody else emailing him besides me. So really, I feel like even this year, we've had more time available for you to do your homework. And I'm giving you, and I have announced that we are going to be working it on Monday for the following Monday. So I'm not sure what else I could do for you. JG, did I miss any days that we worked? No. And typically, if you look at the budgets that we see in appropriations, I'm not sure that they even have that long. It's a less. And I used to serve in social service budget, and that was a ride, so difficult to keep up with it. And I think we'd work it in a day. So, Representative Owsley.
Just a comment from today's Appropriation Committee that I believe higher ed budget is on day 3 of discussions.
Well, and that's great. It may take us 3 days to get through ours, because we like to put things in it. So on Monday, we'll begin working it, and if we're not finished, then we can come back on Tuesday. So I believe that's what's the issue with higher ed is they're working it and they paused. So if that were to be what this committee needed, then that's what this committee would do, was continue to meet. Representative Landwehr.
I just got confirmation from JG. We've actually been doing this for 6 years. And one of the advantages of it operating this way as well is the fact that it doesn't get tied to the deadlines that the Appropriations Committee has to meet. And that's what gives it the ability to actually hear more testimony. As you heard, I did do social services chair. I've got, about 10, 12 years, I think, experience with that budget. And you always just felt like you were in a race to get things done, and you're making, hundreds of millions of dollars decisions and impacting people's lives. You didn't necessarily go through that budget line by line by line by line. You went through by programs and issues and what committee members brought to you. So, I think that since I've been back, I think this has been a much fairer and a very, very much more detail-oriented, and it gives us the opportunity to have the discussions with the Department of Ed and other people as we go through this. So I guess I'm just struggling with the idea that you feel like you're kind of hamstringed with it, Representative.
All right, committee, we have a motion that is on the table, and if there are no other discussions, would you like to close on your motion?
Close.
Committee, the motion is before you to make the recommendation to pull the funding from the said bills and bring it into Senate Bill 113 to be considered on Monday. All those in favor, say aye. Aye. And those opposed, no. And motion carries. Committee, we are adjourned, and we will see you on Monday.